to more prejudicial than probative under 403 grounds. May I be heard? Okay. Your Honor, hearing these statements about Vanessa Sullivan's mother asking Officer Foster to find more evidence for her murder conviction can grossly mislead the jury into believing that she does in fact have an undue influence in today's case, when in fact earlier we did determine that this was in fact more prejudicial than it is probative. Sure.
Earlier, the court ruled that Officer Foster testifying as to what District Attorney Sullivan did or did not say at the time may have been more prejudicial than probative. However, the witness testifying to what happened after District Attorney Sullivan arrived and the testimony and the test that she was subjected to is definitely more prejudicial. It's important for the jury to understand how the evidence that the state is using in today's case was received.
Okay.
Now, Danielle, after you were submitted to these tests by Officer Foster, what happened next?
Officer Foster just put me in handcuffs and he threw me in the back of his police car and took me to the station.
Thank you. Nothing further on.
Cross-examination now. Good afternoon, Ms. Nelson. I'm just going to be asking you a few questions about September 24th, 2010, okay?
Okay.
Now, you say that you arrived at Chuggy's Bar at 2 p.m. on September 24th, right?
Yes.
You arrived after a job interview, as you stated, correct?
Yes.
Now, when you got to Chuggy's Bar, you immediately started drinking alcohol, didn't you?
Yes, I had 3 whiskey and ginger ale. And I had 3 whiskey and ginger ale, so I waited there for about 5 hours, from 2 to 7.
Now, Ms. Dawson, on top of those 3 whiskey and ginger ales, you actually had a shot of alcohol with Jordan the bartender, didn't you?
Yes.
You also, on top of that shot of alcohol, had a beer, right?
I chased my shot of beer.
Ms. Dawson, is it your testimony that you did not have beer with your lunch that afternoon?
Your Honor, Mr. Chairman, will you just answer the question?
Okay. Overall.
Yes, Your Honor.
Ms. Dawson, is it your testimony today that you did not drink beer with your lunch that afternoon?
I just said I did, yes.
So it's your testimony that you were chasing that shot with beer on the afternoon of September 24th, 2010?
I had a beer, a shot, and whiskey and ginger ale.
Ms. Dawson, you created an affidavit before you come into court today, right?
Yes.
You were told to put all relevant and truthful information into this affidavit, correct?
Yes.
You were told that you could make any changes to this affidavit up until 30 minutes before trial today, right?
Yes.
Permission to approach opposing counsel? Permission to approach the witness stand? Here. Ms. Dawson, did I just hand you your affidavit?
Yes.
Is that your name on the front page?
Yes.
Is that your signature on the back page?
Yes.
Would you agree that this is a fair and accurate copy of your affidavit?
Yes.
Now, Ms. Dawson, I would like to turn your attention to line 78 on page 3. If you could please read along with me as I read aloud, okay? I wasn't sure though, so I think I only had 3 whiskey and ginger ales and 1 beer while I sat around and read for most of the afternoon. Did I read that correctly, Ms. Dawson?
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor? So, Ms. Dawson, after these 5 drinks that you had in the afternoon, you met with Vanessa Sullivan at 7 p.m., correct?
Yes, Vanessa got there and Taylor got there at 7.
The 3 of you sat down at your table to have dinner, right?
Yes, correct.
And when you sat down to dinner, Ms. Dawson, you ordered another alcoholic drink, correct?
Yes, I ordered a whiskey on the rocks.
And after you had that whiskey on the rocks after dinner, you went back to the bar to see Jordan James, right?
That is correct.
You had another shot of alcohol with Jordan James at that time, right?
Yes.
And it was at that point that you had beer again, right, Ms. Dawson?
I chased that shot of beer, yes.
And you went back to your table to visit Vanessa and Taylor, right?
Yes.
And what followed was more alcoholic drinks, right, Ms. Dawson?
Yes, I had another drink if that's what you need.
You received a complimentary Jack and Ginger from the bar, right, Ms. Dawson?
Correct.
And you were drinking that Jack and Ginger, right?
Correct.
After that, the band came on stage, right?
Yes.
You got a chance to meet the band at intermission, didn't you?
Yes.
And while you were backstage with the band, you were drinking then as well, right?
Right. I had my Jack and Ginger.
So you were drinking alcohol when you were backstage with the band, right?
Right. The same Jack and Ginger from earlier, but yes, I was drinking it.
And then you went back to your table after intermission, right?
Correct.
It was at that point that Mr. Hobson got up on stage, correct?
Right.
Now you noticed that Mr. Hobson was acting pretty drunk, right?
That's what I thought, yes.
And it was at that point, when you saw Mr. Hobson up on stage, that you came to the conclusion that you would be the most likely candidate to drive, right?
Yes, that's what I noticed.
Now, Ms. Hobson, after you came to this conclusion, though, you ordered yet another alcoholic drink, didn't you?
Yes.
And that was a tequila sunrise, right?
Right.
And you ended up leaving the bar at 12:45, correct?
After Taylor got off stage, yes, we got.
Vanessa needed to be home at 1 o'clock, right?
Right. I didn't know that till we were getting ready to leave, but yes, that is true.
Well, as you were ready to leave, Ms. Dawson, the band, Chatterbox, actually decided to buy your entire group a round of shots, right?
Yeah, they bought everybody a shot. Everybody was still there.
And everybody was going to take a shot of alcohol, correct?
That is correct.
Including you, Ms. Dawson?
I asked the server to give me water.
Well, Ms. Dawson, when you took that shot of what you thought was water, you felt a burn in your throat, didn't you?
I did, but I thought that was heartburn. I had some food earlier, but I did feel the burn. I did feel burn when I drank the water, but I thought it was water. I hoped it was water.
Objection, Your Honor. Motion to strike is speculative as to the fact that she thought it was heartburn.
Your Honor, if I may, the witness can testify as to what they thought at the time that they did some speculation.
The motion to strike is overruled.
Your Honor.
Well, Ms. Ms. Dawson, sorry. Water doesn't usually burn when you drink it, does it?
No, but if I was having heartburn, so that it doesn't have anything to do with what is happening currently.
Well, just specifically to water, Ms. Dawson, yes or no? Does it burn when you drink it?
No, not usually, but if I was having heartburn, then it would.
Well, you never clarified with anybody as to why you might have felt that burn, did you?
No, I wasn't sure. No.
So you never asked anybody why you would feel such a burn,
Your Honor,
right?
this is on the action motion.
That's it.
Your Honor.
So you ended up leaving the bar around 12:45, right?
That is correct.
You were going to be the one driving home, correct?
Yes.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, Vanessa needed to get home at 1 o'clock, right?
Right, but I didn't know that until 12:45.
And you said you were going to make that drive home to Vanessa's house in 10 minutes, right?
That's what I told Taylor.
Now, Taylor Hobson told you he was concerned about that, right?
Yes,
Because the drive usually takes longer than 10 minutes, doesn't it, Ms. Dawson?
that is true.
So you were planning on speeding home that evening, right?
No, I told Taylor that because Taylor was being frantic and yelling and screaming. I didn't plan to speed or meticulously plot to speed. I just told Taylor that so that Taylor would not be so frantic.
Ms. Dawson, you pulled out a radar detector when you got into Vanessa Sullivan's car, didn't you?
Absolutely not.
Is it your testimony today that you did not pull out a radar detector when you got into Vanessa Sullivan's car? Ms. Dawson, may I have a moment, Your Honor? Ms. Dawson, you created an affidavit in today's case, didn't you?
Yes,
You were told to put all relevant and accurate information into this affidavit, right?
yes,
You were told to be completely truthful in this affidavit, right?
yes.
Permission to approach the council. Permission to approach the council. Awesome, I just re-handed you your affidavit.
Yes,
Please just look to the front and back and make sure that that is your name and your signature.
yes,
This is in fact a fair and accurate copy of your affidavit, right?
yes.
Now I'd like to refer you to lines 160 and through 161, and I'd like you to read along with me as I read aloud, okay?
Yes.
Not one to back down from a challenge, I remembered the radar detector in Vanessa's car, pulled it out of the glove compartment, turned it on, and took off. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Permission to approach the witness and retrieve the affidavit. So Ms. Austin, you were planning on speeding home that evening, right?
Yes, Your Honor, I answer.
You took Canyon Road home. You were trying to take Canyon Road, right? From what you noticed, Canyon Road was dark, right?
Yes,
You noticed the Canyon Road had virtually no lights.
that's correct.
You noticed the Canyon Road also had a lot of curves, didn't you?
Yes,
It was also raining very heavily on Canyon Road that night, right?
it was.
And while you were driving in these conditions, you were speeding, weren't you?
Yes,
And Taylor Hobson asked you to slow down, right?
Taylor Hobson was screaming and yelling, and somewhere in there was a slow down. Yeah.
Vanessa even asked you to slow down, right?
Yes, Your Honor, answer.
Well,
Yes, Your Honor.
Vanessa asked you to slow down too, didn't you?
Yes, again, it was competing with Taylor screaming and radio blasting, but I believe she did say that to me.
She said she would call her father and say that they would be late, didn't she?
Vanessa called her father, yes.
And while Vanessa was on the phone with her father, that's when the accident happened, right?
Yes,
And Ms. Dawson, you say that you swerved because you saw a deer on Canyon Road, right?
yes.
Ms. Dawson, you never mentioned this deer to Officer Foster.
Officer Foster never asked me about the deer.
You never,
Officer Foster never asked me about anything about the accident.
Ms. Dawson, you never tried to explain yourself to Officer Foster, did you?
I never said anything to Officer Foster, he never asked me anything, just asked me to do these tests.
Well, earlier on direct examination, you mentioned that you were trying to explain yourself to Officer Foster, right?
I did talk to Officer Foster. I was talking to him, but he never at any point asked me what happened. He just asked me to do these tests.
Ms. Dawson, at that point when you were speaking to Officer Foster, trying to explain to him what happened, you never mentioned a deer, yes or no?
I was on the way to accident answer. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes or no? You never mentioned a deer to Vanessa Sullivan's mother when she arrived and you were explaining yourself to her, right?
Vanessa, no. Mrs. Sullivan was screaming at me, blaming me. No, I didn't say anything about it.
You never mentioned a deer to anyone that night when you crashed Vanessa's car, did you?
No one asked me. No one asked me what happened. No one asked me about my perspective at any point. So no, I didn't say anything.
You never tried to explain yourself to anyone, yes or no?
I didn't say anything about it yet.
No other questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Dawson, on the examination, opposing counsel asked you if you brought a radar detector into the vehicle into the speed. Was it your radar detector?
No, it was in Vanessa's car already.
Objection had a relevance as to the ownership of the radar detector.
All right, fine.
Go ahead.
For the jury to not understand who owned the radar detector would be more prejudicial to the program.
We have your Your Honor. We're here to examine Ms. Dawson's actions in today's case. Who owned the radar detector that evening doesn't make any relevant fact more or less likely.
Whose radar detector was it?
It was Vanessa's. It was in her car in the glove compartment when we got in.
Do you know if those are illegal?
No, I don't know if they are or not. I don't know.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Now, you mentioned that you didn't know that radar detectors were illegal, right?
Well, they may be. I'm not exactly sure. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be difficult. I don't remember I don't remember exactly about the legality of it. And they may be. I'm not saying they aren't. I'm not sure now currently.
So you're saying you're not sure, Ms. Dawson? I just want to clarify.
I'm not sure today currently. I'm not sure today currently. No.
There's no further questions, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor. At the time the principal has called in minutes. Could you please introduce yourself?
Well, sure. My name is London Jedediah Bennett, but everybody calls me London. And currently unemployed, live in a small cane just outside live in a small house just outside Canyon Road in Midlands.
And Mr. Bennett, can you tell us why you're here today?
Well, sure. I guess you could call me an eyewitness to what happened that night at with Vanessa Sullivan and defending the gay state with Dan Dawson.
Now, Ms. Van